switched to live, but
You're live, Chair.
I'm home with comfort.
Good evening, members of the Community and Resources Committee, members of the public watching on YouTube, and may I welcome you all to this meeting of Torridge District Council's Community and Resources Committee. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies
No
today.
apologies, all present. Item 2 is the minutes of the Community and Resources meeting of the 13th of October. I do apologise for my failure to attend that night. That morning rather. Right, I'm going to check that they're okay first of all. Running from the top of the page, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No queries?
I'll move those, Chair.
Councillor Leathers
Second.
proposed them, Councillor Pennington seconded. All those in favour, please show. Nine.
Councillor Brenton, you...
Sorry, no, I'm abstaining because I wasn't present.
1, 2, 3.
9 against, abstentions 3. That's correct. Thank you. Item 3, public contributions. I've not been notified of anyone. Item 4 is the forward plan on page 11. It's there. If you have any comments, wishes, desires, please shout them now. Right, we move on. Item 5, declarations of interest. Members of the committee are well aware of the rules, but for members of the public, I would point out that all members are responsible for bringing to the attention of the meeting whether they have a family or a pecuniary interest or whatever in the subject, which means they should not get involved in it and should declare it. Failure to do so can lead to problems. Item 6, agreement of the agenda between parts 1 and 2. There is a proposal that 2 items should be in part 2. Can somebody formally propose that, please? Councillor James, Councillor Pennington seconds. All in favour as that recommendation? That is unanimous. We will come to it when we get towards the end of the agenda, which means that we shall have to exclude members of the public. Item 7, urgent matters of information. I have none, so I think we're through that one. Item 8, renewal of the Burton at Bideford Art Gallery and Museum Service and Funding Agreement. The Head of Communities in Place will speak on it, but we do have people present from Burton Art Gallery to deal with it also.
Thank you, Chair. So those members that have been around Torridge a long time will remember that prior to 2016, the Burton was run by Torridge District Council. It was an in-house service that we ran, and we took advice at that time about the best way to set things up for the future. Now, also at that time, the final budget that we were running to back in 2016 for the in-house service was about £315,000 a year. That's what it cost us as an in-house service to run at that time. After some extensive feasibility work, we arrived on the fact that setting up a charitable trust and giving it some freedom by running it as an arm's length organisation by contract was a better way to develop our cultural services and look after our asset in the building and our collections as a council. And so the Burton at Bideford Trust was established and has been running the Burton very successfully since 2016. So I won't go into the detail of what the trust provide for us and how they've developed the service, because I think our guests are going to present those things for us. But we've now had, since the establishment of it, we've agreed 2 5-year terms now. The purpose of setting a service funding agreement for 5 years is to give the organisation enough of a foundation to be able to run its service and make plans for the future and really sort of step into that space where Torridge was never quite able to step into. It also, I think, helps you with your MPO status and making sure that you've got that foundation in place as well. But I'll let the team tell you about the detail and the good work that they do, Chair, if that's okay.
Yep. Off you go.
Thank you so much. I'm Harriet Cooper and I'm the Director at the Burton at Bideford.
Rob Millward, I'm the Chair of Trustees at the Burton at Bideford.
So I'm sure many of you will know as well, but we thought it wanted to add a bit of colour to what we've put into the report that you will have seen and talk a little bit more about the impact and also what we're planning for the future. I can't seem to get onto the next slide, Kirsty, sorry. Okay, thank you. So, we are one of the leading cultural venues in the southwest of England, and as Sean said, we're a national portfolio organisation, particularly for visual arts. So we're one of only 12 in the southwest. So that's up against places like the Box and Newlyn Art Gallery and Spike Island as well. We're an accredited museum and a registered charity. I think what's really key to what we do and what we really pride ourselves in is that we bring internationally renowned artists and exhibitions to North Devon so that people can see them here without the cost of travelling to London or other major cities to see work by these artists. But alongside that, we really pride ourselves on being able to support local talent as well. So one week you might see a Picasso on the wall, and the next week you might see a 7-year-old child from Torrington's portrait, which is something that we really love being able to facilitate. We look after Torridge District Council's collections and also continue to acquire and continue to think about how we kind of represent the history and conversations of Torridge. So we have over 5,000 works in those collections at the moment, which is quite a big undertaking, and we would love to have more of those on display in the future. I think what's really key for the building, and perhaps one of the reasons we have such high visitor figures, we have 162,000 last year, is that it's not just about what's on the walls in the galleries. We're a real community hub, and we have a lot of people who use the building, not necessarily to go into the galleries, but maybe to come to a workshop, to come to a support group, to meet someone in the cafe. So there's a real social value and a sort of well-being value to what we do. Alongside that, as part of the business model, we have a shop, we have a craft gallery, we lease a cafe, and it's all what makes the experience of being in the Burton really special. And we hear that a lot from our visitors, that kind of warmth. We're still running tourist information, and we've been able to have the support of the Regeneration Board to digitise that. But I think, you know, even this year on a Friday in September, we counted 37 inquiries that needed one-to-one attention for tourist information. And 15 of those were about bus timetables not being reprinted. So something, you know, we're constantly kind of thinking about. And this year we became an accredited living wage employer as well. Could we go on to the next slide? This is actually a really awful slide to look at, but I just wanted to include it to give a scope of the work we do. There's a lot we do behind scenes that isn't necessarily seen in the public programme. And there's a lot of closed work we do that is with particular groups that are perhaps more vulnerable or are working with specialist agencies and charities that isn't something we publicly advertise. So there's a lot of collection care, there's a lot of acquisitions, there's a lot of community workshops and wellbeing groups. And we do all of this with a pretty small staff team. So we are open across 7 days, although we're only open to the public on 6 days. On the Mondays, we run a home education sessions, and we welcome schools with specialist needs to have the galleries to themselves. And we have just 8.7 full-time equivalent members of staff. So it isn't big at all, but we are doing kind of a lot for our money. Next slide, please. Although we are based in Bideford, we work across the whole of Torridge and into North Devon as well. And you can see on this map kind of the reach of the work we do. Most of the work that happens outside of the building is with schools, either with us having visits with them coming to the gallery or sometimes taking the art box out to them, which is a horse box we've converted into a space where we can take art to rural areas. We also attend community festivals with that art box and take art and craft out into the community. So this is the last sort of 5-year spread of our work. We're really thinking about how to increase this in the future, and I'll talk a little bit more about that then. Next slide. As well as the work we do within Northern Devon, I think it's really key to say nothing we do alone. So we work in partnership across the UK, across the region, across Northern Devon and across Bideford's communities as well. The map on the left shows you where we've worked with organisations, particularly to bring artwork to Northern Devon. So we're one of the few organisations who work with Tate on their Artist Room programme. We work with the British Museum, we've worked with the British Library, and we've also worked with more regional galleries who are sometimes working in similar contexts to us, like Towner in Eastbourne or the Hepworth in Wakefield as well. Locally, I think we're in such a fantastic scenario where we have so many brilliant community partners who are working towards the same aims as us, whether that be the Biosphere or it be Space Youth Centre across the road from us. We have really key collaborations where we can begin to make change together. Next slide, please. I think if you asked anyone in our team, and when I joined the team a year ago, this was the main thing that everyone said to me, that we had to still be free. That is absolutely key to all of our team. It's a really tricky economic climate to stay free, but it's something that we really value because it means that anybody in Torridge can walk into the building and feel like they can be there without having to pay a cost for that. I think for comparison, in the Southwest, if you were to visit Tate St Ives, it's £14 for an adult ticket. If you were to visit Newlyn Gallery across Newlyn and Penzance, I think it's £8. And Royal Albert Memorial Museum in Exeter, their charged exhibitions are around £6. So the fact that we have this asset and this resource and this building that people can come and be in with no cost is really key to us as an organisation. Next 2 slides, please. So I think this statistic was in the report we submitted, but when we've put together kind of the data that we'll have achieved across this 5-year service level agreement, we will have welcomed nearly 250,000 visitors, which is really huge for, you know, a gallery of our size in our location. I was looking at Royal Albert Memorial Museum's annual review, and last year they welcomed 190,500 visitors. And what struck me about that is that they're working with a staff team of 51 members of staff. So I really don't underestimate how people use the building, how people are welcomed into the building, and how important it is that we can offer that. I think we can go to the next slide. We get really fantastic feedback from our audiences, both young and old. And one of the things I'm personally very interested about, who are our audiences now, but who is not coming? At the moment, we have 53% of our audience are from within 10 miles. And this is based on the surveys we do with visitors. So this is our last year's data. So 53% from within 10 miles. And then I think it's another 17% within 25 miles. So we're looking at 70% of our audience are very much within Northern Devon and kind of the Southwest. So it's really great to see that regularity of local audience and how important that is. We also know that 59% of our audience visit as a social activity, and I think that's something I really don't want to underestimate. There's been a lot of research recently about the importance of art and seeing art in person in terms of health and well-being and the impact it has on the body. And so it's really nice to see that most people are coming in groups rather than coming alone as well. Next slide. I'd mentioned earlier that quite a lot of people who visit the building don't necessarily come to see the exhibition every week. They might come for another reason. And one of the projects that we run is called the Great Burton Sewing Bee, which is a really key project for us in supporting wellbeing and social inclusion. It's entirely free. If you are interested in sewing, you can come with or without your sewing machine, and it allows people to be in a space and make things together, but also hold a conversation and an important kind of group. We've had really fantastic feedback from this programme, and last year we ran 39 sessions with 269 attendees. This year, the programme's been supported by the Foyle Foundation, and in real terms, it costs us about £4,000 a year to run in staff time and the cost of the room that we use for it. But we offer that for free, and it really has supported people's wellbeing and mental health, particularly for older communities as well. Next slide, please. It's really become part of the ecosystem of the building, and we find this with a lot of the more wellbeing and health groups and social groups, is that they feed into other projects. So this slide shows a giant quilt that was made for Bideford Pride this year, and the sewing group were a key part in kind of making patches for this, in putting it all together, but they also work with the Burton Youth Collective They work with our Brave Spaces group, the Bideford Pride Youth Group, and so it's brought together these contributions from lots of different people, and that ability to connect socially has been really key. This quilt actually then went on to be part of the 2025 Festival of Quilts in Birmingham at the NEC there in the group quilt category. So it's been really nice to see something made by our communities travel nationally and be seen by a much wider audience. Next slide. So we really don't underestimate the importance of the economic impact that we make, and it's something I think a lot about going forward, about how we can continue to be a cultural flagship, but also grow that so we're bringing more money into the area. In 2024 to 2025, our gross economic impact was estimated at over 5 million, with our audiences estimated to spend about 4.5 million in the local area. Now, 19% of our audiences are travelling over 100 miles to visit, so there is a really key tourist audience which is tying in with the wider tourism offer in the area, and is really important to bring money to the businesses here. 93% of our visitors said they do something else when they visit us, whether that be go to a sporting event, a pub, a cafe, a restaurant, shop, go for a walk, do other things around Torridge. So it's really good to see us as part of an ecosystem that is making Torridge a really exciting place to visit. This year, our income is going to be around £700,000 for various reasons, including some grants we'll mention briefly. But it means that for every pound that Torridge has invested in us this year, we've brought an extra £4 back into the economy. And I think it's really worth saying, as Sean mentioned, Torridge District Council support enables a lot of those grants because we're only eligible for them because we are supported by our District Council and we're looking after the collection. Next slide, please. So, our future. It's a big one. I've been here a year now as director, and I love it. We've had a period in the organisation where we've had about 5 years of more unstable leadership, and now very much here to stay. We enter our 75th anniversary next year, which is huge. It's a massive anniversary for a regional gallery like ours, and a really exciting moment, I think, where we can look forward at the future. So certainly within the team and the work we plan to do next year, we're really looking to talk to our communities around us and build a new strategy for what the next 75 years of the Burton could look like and should look like. And I think a big part of that is recalibrating and talking to people about what they want from culture in Torridge going forward. There's 3 really key things that I'm working on with the team and really core to our kind of forward strategy. And they are very much our civic role. What is our role in the town of Bideford and the district of Torridge? How do we help drive regeneration, jobs, economy? And crucially to that, what are we doing outside of our building? Who are we partnering with? How are we visible? How are we connecting to people who may not feel comfortable stepping inside the walls of our building itself? We really want culture to be a part of everyday life for all citizens in Torridge. The collections is something that we're really keen to focus on and to utilise as much as possible. I think one of the things that really attracted me to the role when I was hearing about the story of the Burton is how this founding collection from Hubert Coope was gifted to the town of Bideford as a place that they thought it would have real appreciation. And it being here longer, it makes me think about how many people really are connected to that collection and know what's in it and get that opportunity to find their own stories within it. So we're working on new ways to get the collection out more, to put it in line with contemporary work that talks to people's lives today, and to try and find new ways to bring community voices into it. The next, our future generations, is a huge thing that we think and talk about a lot, and that incorporates a number of things, but partly one of the founding missions of the gallery was to leave the town richer, and to leave it richer for those who are here, but also those who are still to come. And when I joined the team, I was very much thinking about this idea of custodianship. How are we actually making things better for this next 75 years and the generation who will be there? So it really is feeding into our future work in terms of how we work with the environment, how we think about that in our programme and in our partnerships, but also how we focus on young people and our work with both youth but also schools, and how we can really ensure creativity is part of that. Next slide, please. Burton Futures is a project that we founded last March and is really key to that next generation vision for us. And it was founded on this belief that all children in Northern Devon should have free access to art and creative activities, primarily as part of their education. Thankfully there is some good news for creative subjects in the curriculum last week, But we're in a period where we've seen a decline in access to creative subjects in schools. And we are hearing from teachers that we work with across the district that it's becoming too expensive to be able to actually bring classes to visit exhibitions in person, both in terms of the cost of living crisis and people just not having excess cash to be able to either come outside of school or donate to school trips, but also schools themselves are finding the cost is prohibitive. With the support of our communities, we fundraised £10,000 in March to be able to offer bursaries to schools to bring classes to visit us, but also to be able to offer bursaries that we would take workshops, artist workshops out to schools across the district. We can go to the next slide, please. So over this summer, we have visited Hartland, Bradford, Holsworthy and Cheviot, engaging over 250 children in rural communities with this Camera Obscura project, which connects art and science in the curriculum. And this winter we'll begin hosting visits to the gallery, particularly around the John Miro show, which will be a really exciting thing. We're able to employ artists through that. It's been really key to me that we're a creative employer here. We're helping that financial ecosystem for independent freelancers as well. So we employ artists to be able to work with the children and give artist workshops. And we'll also be able to fund some CPD for teachers, so we're keeping that connection strong. This is a programme that we're going to be continuing to grow, and in particular, in the next 2 years, we're looking at how we might pilot with a number of schools, actually having a longer term view on this. How could it not just be one visit, 1 year, one class to the gallery? How could these classes have access to art from the collection more regularly? So we're beginning to explore opportunities to loan works from the collection, or works that we're purchasing specifically for this reason, to schools, so that a class could pick a work or 2 works that they can have on the wall for a year, and they can actually live with the art that this district owns around them. So it's a project we've seen work really well in other galleries, and we're excited to think about it for Torridge, where it is really hard sometimes to travel. Next slide. So we have a lot of ambition, and we're really excited for these kind of next steps and next kind of vision for the gallery, and how we can be a really key player in providing culture for the next 75 years in Torridge. But there are challenges, which I don't think will be a surprise to any of you. The impact of the cost of living is really hitting all of the communities in Torridge hard. And in terms of our business model, we know that our audiences, particularly our local audiences, have less disposable income and less ability to fund and donate to the gallery as well. Static grants have been really tricky for us as rising costs have continued. So most of the grants that support our core activity, which is from Torridge District Council and Arts Council England, haven't risen for 5 years. And the way that inflation has gone has meant that our gap is just growing between those things. So that has caused a real problem. Our Arts Council England grant, as you'll see in the report, is unlikely to rise until 2028 now, due to situation with Arts Council England. And we received the lowest grant of any of the 6 MPOs across Northern Devon currently for that, which, considering the scale of the work we do, I think is really problematic. Restrictions in space are one of the things that I'm sure those of you who've been on this committee for longer have heard from the Burton before. We have a brilliant big collection. We only have about 30% of it on show at any one time. And I think outside of what we can show from the collection, our business model is becoming restricted by the space of our building. We're reaching that kind of peak moment as to where we can increase income generation from our own earned income, particularly around the shop, room hire, adult workshops. We don't have the space to be able to increase those income streams any further, so that is something we'll be tackling in the future. The fundraising context for every charity is really tricky at the moment, and we're finding the competition for trusts and foundations money is really, it's never been as bad as it is now. We've not had as we've had a period of changing leadership, we've not had kind of consistent fundraising for a while. So we are really kind of trying to approach that, but it is a really tough context. We have a lot of ambition, but our staff capacity is challenged. 8.6, I'm the only full-time member of staff, and we have, kind of held back from re-recruiting posts in order to manage our budgets. So it is tricky to deliver everything we do on the staff we have, but it's not going to stop us continuing to be ambitious, I think. And local government reorganisation, we want to make sure these collections and this asset and this this fantastic building are able to stay here for the future of Torridge. And we have worries about what that might look like. I know it's an unknown scenario, but we really want to make sure that all of the residents in Torridge continue to have access to the Burton in the future. Next slide. Just to give you a tiny bit of a sense of our income profile over this period of the service level agreement, this kind of illustrates, I guess, the static nature of some of our grants and where we're kind of reaching that top height in terms of what we can achieve in income generation. So as you can see, the first two kind of are static grants, which have stayed pretty much the same since the pandemic. Our fundraising has really accelerated in these last 2 years, but that's primarily been because we've been investing back into our building and into our organisation. So in 2024, we received a large grant from Arts Council England to be able to improve the asset of the Burton Gallery, which has included installing solar panels, 120 solar panels on the roof, making accessible energy efficient toilets and replacing windows as well. So the building itself that we lease from you is significantly improved, and we continue to care for that and repair it as well. Shop and craft has continued to rise in income generation, but we are at that peak point now where the space we have is really dictating how much more we can expect to gain from that. We will be launching a new website next year, and we had hoped that would offer opportunities to increase our online sales. However, the space in our building really restricts our ability to pack and process orders. So we're having to be cautious about what is possible in that scenario, and I don't think we'll be able to fully expect income to improve that way. Our costs around our income around the cafe has mainly just increased with rising costs because we recharge bills. So the lease hasn't changed from that since 2016, but we are renegotiating a new lease, hopefully for April 2026. Workshops and hire is an area where we've seen significant increase since the beginning of this service level agreement. And we've really seen that appetite for learning creative skills and coming to workshops or using that space, hiring that space, from people like the NHS or from individual groups who are want a cultural space, a central space to meet in. So we've really seen that rise, but we are at a point where the time we have available for rental is really limited in our rooms. The rooms have to work really hard. Next slide, please. So I think that hopefully that gives a little bit more colour as to where we are as an organisation and what we're thinking about and how we're hoping to continue collaborating with Torridge District Council in the future. It is a really exciting moment, and we are really ambitious for how we can be a really key player in future regeneration in the district and continue to collaborate with the officers at Torridge District Council and regeneration boards across the district to make sure that culture's at the heart of that. I think we've seen across the UK in other towns and cities what power culture and art has to bring economic value, to support well-being and health, and to really kind of create an enriched life in these areas. So it's really important to us to do that. We have challenges coming up: funding, capacity, space are big ones. But I think that's probably not new news to you either, and I'm sure that we will face them well. And I think I do want to highlight that we are really aware and kind of conscious of the economic impact of our work and how that can continue to help local businesses here thrive. And I think you will have seen in the report last year we calculated that 60% of our expenditure was spent in Northern Devon, 70 or 75 I think was spent within the Southwest. So we're really trying to make sure the money that we're bringing into the region is staying here and helping local businesses to thrive. The request that we have put in the report is for a continuation of investment at the inflationary rate. So although it is an increase, it's really what that 140,000 would be worth today. And I think for us, that's the minimum support we feel we need to keep providing the service we do. We're ambitious to do more, and we really think we can play a bigger part in the future of Torridge. But I think this is kind of the minimum that we need to keep being the brilliant organisation that we are.
Thank you. Good presentation. Right, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to move the recommendations on page 20, 1 and 2, which is what is required, I think. Also, the Burton, I have to say, has come on amazingly well. As a pottery apprenticeship, which I had back in a long time ago, I hardly ever went to the Burton because really all that was in there was some old Harvest pictures, which were very good, but on the other hand, limited, and Napoleonic bone ships, and that really was it. And the curator used to read the Guardian pretty well from cover to cover, and nothing else to do. But it's not like that now. And I must say, exhibitions I've been to are top quality. This gallery has got a nationwide reputation. I know that. So my sister-in-law is attached to the Milton Keynes gallery system up there, and they know of it up there. So, you know, it does spread, and it draws in a huge amount of creative money into the area. So, you know, it's absolutely, there's no argument with it, really. Do it.
Councillor Tinsley?
Yeah, I've got a question actually. Maybe it's for the officers as well. But you said that in the past 5 years, the fact that you've had a static grant had been a problem, and now one of the recommendations is that we approve another static grant. Why are we not building in inflation into the grant that we're proposing? And perhaps the head of communities and place might answer that.
No, I can take a stab at answering,
Yeah.
but I think the team might be best placed. The process that we've gone through to get to this point is essentially I asked the team to discuss with the trust what they needed to require, and I think what's just been presented back is this is your baseline, this is the foundation sort of contribution that we required. If members wanted to inflate that over the period of the 5 years, then I'm sure the guys would be happy benefactors of that, because it will enable them to do more. But this is the minimum that's been asked for, in recognition of all the things that we've talked about. You know, that there isn't a massive amount of spare money knocking around.
Right. Councillor Pennington next.
Chair, I'd like to second Councillor Brenton's proposal at the present moment. Congratulations on the presentation. I have to declare an interest because my 6-year-old grandson won a prize at the Burton going through school. So I've had to make that declaration, and he's now inspired for art for the rest of his life. He had a £25 prize. I don't know if you like the £25 prize or the painting he did, but I follow the Burton. I hope Pete Watson's watching tonight. We've had many a battle with Pete Watson over the Burton over the years. I was lead for community and culture back in the time of 2016, and then transferring it out. So it's been great to see the work that's been done, and it's a great pleasure to go into Burton every so often when we go down there on the quay. So I'm happy to second Councillor Brenton's recommendation.
Councillor Leather?
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's not all sunshine and light. It isn't. And I've always supported the Burton, and I think they do a wonderful job. I visit the exhibitions in there, the gallery, although they charge a bit too much commission in that gallery for my liking. I think they're screwing some of the exhibitors there at 50%. But some of the courses they run, and I noticed the sewing bee one where it's funded by the Burton. Now, why aren't they paying it themselves? £4,500 to fund people who sew. Well, surely they can pay for that themselves. I do know that they were running an arts course for students who were educated at home since the COVID epidemic, because a lot of children never went back into full-time education. They were being educated at home. And I know several who joined that course, and it would lead, they were told, to a bronze, silver and gold medal. And I know some who attended 4, 5, 6 years of courses and ended up with nothing at the end. It wasn't very well run. Part way through, over the last couple of years, it was £100 for the course over the weeks for 3 hours. Suddenly the Burton cut it in, split it between morning and afternoon, and you get 2 hours for £100. No explanation, but an increase in price for local families. Now I know a lot of the students who were going now go to Barnstable instead. I do know some who went a long way through the course and ended up with nothing. So it's not all brilliant in there at all. And I do think that a jump from 140 to 179 is a huge jump. I've always argued they ought to charge even a basic £5 per adult, £2 a child, something like that. They should charge. Why should it be free? People who come and visit can't believe that it is free. But why should the ratepayers of Torridge stump up all the time? And I'm saying that as somebody who's pleased we've got the Burton in Bideford. I think all the way down this western coast until you get to St Ives, there's nowhere else, nowhere comparable. So I do support it, but it's not all just to write, oh yes, more money like that. They should be charging, I think. And I like, they ought to look very carefully at some of these courses that they promote and people pay good money for that don't deliver what they say they will. I'll finish on that happy note, Chair.
Would I be okay to
Yes.
respond? Thank you for that feedback. It's really useful to hear that about the home education courses in particular. I believe we went to the 2 sessions because we had a really high request for a wider age group, so we split into 2 different age group sessions, and therefore it became smaller, so there's more focused attention. I don't have the figure to hand, but I think it was around 8 of our students went through bronze last year. I know we've got 2 going through who are ready to go through now, but I think we have struggled to get people to the silver level, and it's some training that we're doing internally on that. So do really take that feedback, and I will talk to the team who are leading that for that. I think in terms of projects like the Sewing Bee and also the conversation about charging, the Sewing Bee, you know, we've been able to fund that externally this year, so it supports the core cost it takes us to run that. But I think one of the reasons it's such an important programme for us is that it has one of the highest socioeconomic diversity of our programmes. A lot of our residents in Torridge can't afford to pay £60 to come to a course to learn how to do something, or to pay £10 to come to a print session every week. So that ability to connect in a space which isn't about how much money you have, and to be able to do something creative and meet people feels really important to what we do. Like, we know in our audience we have a real range, but a lot of our audience kind of are coming from a retired position. We have a lot of older audience. And I think I'm really cautious of acknowledging that we have a really high socioeconomic diversity across Torridge. So being able to remain free and enable that free access to art feels really core to the mission, to me and the team in that way.
Chair, if I could just come back on that. It's all well and good saying about the senior people that you mentioned, retired people, but I'm talking about students who had been homeschooled, don't have the chance to meet with any of their age groups very often. They valued that, going to the art thing, and now the tuition was poor. I've got to say it was poor, and it didn't work. It's not worked, and as I said, a lot of students now go to Barnstable rather than the Burton, and £100 isn't cheap for a lot of families in the area to send their child to that course, and then just to cut it on the say so, oh well, we've got more people want to do it. Instead of 3 hours, you're getting 2 hours. It just wasn't on, it shouldn't have happened, Chair, but there we are.
So I think it's worth me saying that certainly at the moment we're running our home education courses at a loss. £10 per session for a 10-week session doesn't cover the cost of the tutor, but we really value it as an important place, particularly for those young people, to come together. Over this kind of last 5 years, all of our costs have risen, and the costs for freelance artists to deliver that course have risen, the cost of the building. So we have had to increase the costs of our courses across the board, and art for home education is one of those.
Councillor Hames.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't gonna. Yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask you, talking about space as a constraining factor. Have you got plans to, enlarge the building, or have you looked at things like sort of leasing a building, another building in the area, or possibly in Barnstable as a sort of outreach, rather like the Plough's done with St Andrew's Chapel, for instance?
It's something that's really high on the agenda, and I think when I joined the team, it was something that the first thing everyone said to me was, we need more space, and we need more space to be able to be the best version of the organisation we can be. I think particularly looking to the future in order to build a sustainable business model that isn't reliant on grants and enable us to have the capacity to deliver what we have, because the challenge at the moment is we're having to fundraise so much that our staff capacity then to do the work we want to do for the community is limited. It is a really key thing that we and the board are looking at. It's something that is absolutely key for us to do in collaboration with Torridge District Council, and to be having that conversation. So we're very much part of the regeneration board and working with Chris Fuller and Sean and the team on the master plan, and trying to think about how potential expansions or extensions for the Burton in the future work for the town and not just for what we do within those walls. So it's really important that it's tied into a bigger vision for us, but it is very much at the forefront, certainly of mine and the board's mind, in terms of what this next 5 years look like.
Yeah, we've actually secured funding for a feasibility study for the development of a building close to the Burton, which we would, well, it would actually be led by Torridge, but we would be hope to be seriously involved in.
Okay, Councillor Piper.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just 2 points really. One, I was interested in Councillor Tinsley's comments about inflation. You know, just very aware of the cost of living affects organisations as well. And I know a lot of organisations have really struggled because of increased costs. And I take it the previous agreement was 140,000 spread over 5 years.
Per year.
So per year. Sorry, yeah, per year, but 140 per year. I just worry about having a 5-year agreement where there's no allowance for inflationary rise. Somebody more astute financially would be able to say that there's probably a figure you could link something to, consumer indexes, or so I'm looking at Peter there. But you know, whether it's something for this committee to consider, you know, an agreement with an allowance for inflationary rise. And then my other question was probably to you guys, and it's a bit of an obvious one, but what's your policy on sort of donations or impact on that? Have you got a policy? Have you got any figures on that? You know, if people want to give, obviously that's a way of, I personally like the idea of these things being accessible to all, but also it's nice that people are able to, they can contribute to it.
Thank you. I think to your first point, and to Teresa's, Councillor Tinsley's point as well, I think we really would welcome that discussion about inflationary increase on a potential renewal of the service and funding agreement, because as you say, it is a real reality that our costs are going up every year, and we would be coming back here in 5 years' time saying, oh, we're struggling. So yeah, I think for us to really thrive, that link to the index would be really helpful. In terms of donations, it's a really key area for us. I think we're conscious that in a fundraising perspective, there are areas which are really challenging, but areas we've also not tried as hard with in the past. So we've had some investment from Arts Council England this year to work with a fundraising specialist, and we'll be building a new fundraising strategy. And I think the potential area of growth for us in fundraising is supporting more individual giving, and how we can tell people what we do and how they might want to support us, whether that is now, whether it's leaving a legacy in a will, whether it's through sponsorship for corporate sponsors. I think the challenge for us in the past in terms of being able to explore that has been our team's capacity to do that. We are probably one of the few galleries with the impact that we have that don't have a dedicated fundraiser in our team. It is spread primarily across myself and our senior management team. And it means that that work of cultivating relationships with individuals and patrons and organisations who might sponsor us is really hard to support. So we have some investment to have a look at that and to see if that's an area we can develop. We have a hugely generous audience, and you know, we know that money is really tough, but we do get donations coming into the boxes in the gallery and the tap points, and we have been really pleased to see that raise a little this year. And I think that's partly been because we are becoming more confident in talking about our role as a charity, what we do, what we deliver, and also that we do need money. There's a reality that we have a core gap that we have to fundraise for. So this year over the summer, we have been more explicit about suggesting a donation of £5, particularly for visitors to the area who, you know, do expect to pay. You know, if somebody comes in and says, oh, what's the ticket price? We will encourage that because we know that that money will be coming back into Torridge and is really important to that. So yeah, we certainly welcome donations. Yeah, there are boxes in the gallery. There are ways to donate online. And, you know, if anyone has a fortune they want to give us, then my email address is on the website.
And in fact, the Burton Futures that Harriet mentioned earlier was the first time we've gone for a week whereby people can donate online, and there's a separate charity which actually will double that donation, and we were looking for 5,000 from online donations, and we promoted that locally and more widely, and we managed to achieve over £5,000 and have that doubled.
Yeah, we had huge generosity from our community and our community across the UK as well. We had a lot of givers in Torridge, but we also had people give from elsewhere because they really valued their campaign. That actually being able to give bursaries to schools is really key. And it's been exciting, I think, for our team to see that actually since then, there's been very high profile campaigns by people like the British Museum who have had a big funder come in and fund bursaries to schools across their programmes. So it's a need that galleries across the country are seeing and know that needs to be supported. So we've been really, really kind of touched that our community have helped raise that extra money. That match funding campaign was really successful.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really very useful. And I've just got a couple of questions. The Friends. Do you get any money from the Friends? I mean, you used to.
We do. So the Friends of the Burton are a separate charity, and so they fundraise on our behalf. It's primarily through two things at the moment. So there is the annual exhibition, which is just opened in case anybody wants to come and see it. It's a fantastic exhibition of local artists and all the works are for sale. So they support both the Burton and the artists. So that is one of the fundraisers that they still run for us. They also run events, so they do a regular fundraising quiz every year, which will be coming up on the 27th of November for anyone into quizzing.
Do they not give you a specific amount?
They do, so it depends on how much they've been able to fundraise. I think this last year we've had 15,000 contribution from them. They also find that they will occasionally get legacy gifts from members of the Friends, so their finances as kind of as a charity are managed separately, but give us a sort of donation each year depending on how much they're able to.
And they're quite keen on donating towards specific projects when we find one that they like, that we like, and they've done that a few times recently.
So nothing much has changed, which is good.
Yes.
Thank you.
We work closely with them, in fact.
Yeah, well, that's grand. In the presentation, the presentation we got online, you talk about the gallery being gifted to Bideford. Right, so where's the Bideford Town Council in all of this?
It's a good question, yeah.
Well, I've always felt quite strongly about it, actually.
I think the narrative that kind of is talked about with the gallery is this idea, you know, of it being kind of founded by Thomas Burton and Hubert Coop, and that being a gift to Bideford. When I say that, I don't mean kind of the running kind of specifically, but something we are looking at in the building at the moment is how we tell the story of the history of the gallery better, because I'm really conscious that when you come into our building, if you don't know it well, I don't think there's anywhere that really tells you the history of the gallery, and that's a big history, over 75 years of support from Bideford Town Council, of how some of those works have come into the collection of Torridge District Council and of its current state. So it's something we're looking to interrogate and particularly talk about in our 75th year.
Good luck with that, but I think it's really important. And the last thing is you're talking about needing more room, and I'm quite sure you do need more room. I wonder a good idea might be to move the museum somewhere else and more suitable. And then you'd have some more room without investing further in building.
Yeah,
just a thought.
It's certainly a potential. I think we're open to looking at different options. I think one thing we are really keen is the museum isn't a static thing that becomes seen as a dusty kind of relic. It tells such important stories that are really relevant now.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the reason why it's felt so key in the building. And certainly going forward in the next couple of years, we're looking at how do we bring more conversations into the museum and be able to refresh that more regularly. So I think it's a really good question about what format of the museum and the Contemporary Art Gallery works best.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Tinsley?
Yes, what can I say? I mean, the Burton is a really good presentation, and I mean, some of the exhibitions we've had recently have been absolutely fantastic. And what's been amazing is to see our own artists and our own heritage alongside these world-class artists. The exhibition, abstraction, it was really great to see an exhibition from another part of the country with world-class paintings and so on, but then next to it something from our own collection as well. Really, really brilliant. So it's a showcase for our heritage and for our creativity locally as well. And it clearly performs a really important social role. We've made that really clear, as well as the cultural one. But even if people are not convinced by the culture or the social side, you need to be convinced by the economy, by the economic argument, because bringing in 4 or 5 times more from what Torridge invests in it is incredible. I don't know any other, well, who else does that locally? So I think you deserve every penny. And I would propose, if an amendment, that we should include an inflation-linked uplift, because I don't want to be here in a year or two's time with a request for emergency funding.
In the recommendations, number 1, it does say for review in year 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Bright.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for both the very detailed report and also for the presentation that you gave. Thank you. I think it broke down what the Burton offers in a kind of the wide variety of ways, including some things that we might not necessarily think of straight away. There were 2 things that I think are really important for me in what the Burton offers to the community. And I think it's essential, absolutely essential, that the Burton is free. I can't tell you how strongly I feel about that. I think families, whether they're on holiday or from Bideford, if it's a rainy half-term day or whatever it is, they need to be able to feel that they can walk into the entrance of that building and there is no barrier whatsoever to them going in and experiencing whatever's there. If their child's art is displayed in the school's exhibition, they should be able to walk in with their grandparents and say, wow, look at this, without having to get a ticket. And that is the magic of what that gallery offers. So absolutely essential. And secondly, as Councillor Tinsley's pointed out, this isn't just a feel good, how lovely it is that the community has this thing. It does have this economic force behind it. And there can't really be any reason that this committee should refuse this funding because of the economic output that we get from it, as well as the social and cultural value. So thank you so much for your hard work.
Right, well, I've got no one else wishing to speak. I have a proposal, Councillor Lewis.
Well, having listened to colleagues speaking, as they have, I think to jump from 140 to 179,000.
That's an inflation increase. So
Carry on, Councillor
Allegedly.
Lewis.
That's a huge increase, £39,000 a year. If it'd been 160,000 a year with an inflation link that could be looked at every September when Torridge are setting the budgets for the following year, I would be happy with that, but I will not be supporting 79,000 a year just like that. I just think it's too large a jump.
I know what you say, but look, I've got a proposal and a seconder. I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour that the recommendation set out as number 5 be approved, please show. Eleven against, 1. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you,
And now we can move on to agenda item number 9. Proposed Muga at North. Who's taking that one, Adrian?
You got Adrian Avery for that one, Chair?
Sorry, Chair, can I clarify whether I should be declaring an interest as a member of Northern Town Council?
You shouldn't be voting either, actually,
Okay.
because you can't sit on one organisation asking for something, then sit on the committee approving or disapproving.
I'll stay in the room.
Yeah, you're fine to say, yeah, absolutely.
So, councillor Hames has declared an interest as a member of Northern Town Council.
Other members of Northern Town Council.
Yeah.
Well, there are, but if they choose not to declare an interest, that's up to them.
I suppose I could, yes, okay, I'll declare an interest then. Cheating on the edge.
Is that all the Northern members here?
I'll record it.
Chair, I'm a Northern member, I've nothing to declare, no interest to declare at all. It's nothing to do with Northern Town Council.
It's an application from Northern Town Council.
Is it?
Yes.
I don't read it as that. It's section 106 funding that was allocated to Northern.
It's been requested from Northern Town Council, section 106 funding.
Page 22, top of. Under
Page 25 in the recommendation as well.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's up to you.
I suggest you declare it, Chris. Right, we'll move forward. We've got 2 declarations of interest. Adrian, would you like to put the proposal forward?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Evening, everybody. I'll try and keep this relatively short. I've got two applications for Section 106 money. Recently, as part of our policy, any applications that come in over £20,000, we bring it to CNR for approval. This being the first one this evening is an application from Northern Town Council for funding request of just under £59,000 with a maintenance contribution of £14,000. Purpose of the report for this committee to decide if the application for approval for funding towards a mugger project is favourable. This is subject to planning permission, which is currently underway at the moment. As an introduction, we hold the Section 106 green infrastructure funding from the housing development of Landacombe Road in Westwood Ho, which is identified specifically for off-site sports and recreation contribution towards a multi-use games area or playing pitches in Westwood Ho, which makes this quite specific for what funds can be used for from that development. In terms of the report, hopefully you've all read the report. We know Northern Town Council has recently developed Avon Lane in Westwood Ho, Avon Lane playing facilities and parks with the new tennis courts in Westwood Ho, enhancing that space quite considerably. It's always been a long-term ambition. They've gone through community engagement to really understand what the best use of that site is. Project outcomes are for simply to create an activity space for all age ranges, for locals as well as tourists coming to the area to really boost that site, and this will be the completion of that play space. Free accessible space, high quality outdoor space for recreation. And encourage physical activity, improve the health and well-being, as well as provide positive opportunities for young people. I know I've done some work previously with councillors at Northern to try and we've understand that they do get some issues of for things to do in Westwood Ho for youngsters specifically, and this would just add to that value a little bit more of the space. So something a bit more positive there to consider. It's already a well-used recreational space with lots of footfall locally. Increased physical activity is the is the aim really. The Mugger will provide safe, accessible space for children, teenagers and adults to play football, basketball and netball, encouraging regular exercise. Project management, this is all be undertaken by Northern Town Council. They have the team to, they're going through their own procurement. They also have the day-to-day management of their team that go around monitoring progress and monitoring the space. Also, in terms of its maintenance, they have that team in place already to keep the upkeep of the facility, to keep it safe for all its users. I'll just flip right to the last bit. Statement, just as that was a statement from Northern Town Council clerk. Our project is to create a multi-use games area in Westwood Ho to provide a safe and inclusive, accessible outdoor space for sport and recreation. The Mugger will have a durable all-weather surface, goals, hoops and secure fencing, making it suitable for a wide range of sports including football, basketball and netball. It will be a free-to-use, open to all ages, designed to support both structured activity and informal play. By providing this facility, we aim to promote health, well-being, community cohesion, while offering young people positive and a safe environment to be active. I'll leave it at that point there to go back to the recommendation for this committee to approve the funding from that housing development that we currently hold for them of just under £59,000 with a maintenance pot of £14,000, which will cover them for the next 10 years of their lowest maintenance value.
Right,
Thank you, Chair.
it seems to me this is a rubber stamp job. I'll propose it
Chair.
from the chair. Yes, hold on a
I'm
moment.
sorry, I've got egg in my face here. I was looking ahead at the, too far ahead. Yeah, this is a Northern Town Council application, so if Stacey will note that I've mentioned that I'm a member of Northern Town Council. But if you're moving it, I'll second it, Chair.
Councillor Darton seconded.
Can I just ask one?
Yes.
Just page 24, and it is a bugbear of mine always, just before the conclusions. We have no lead member views, we have no ward member views, and we come to this again and again. Why is we putting this in and not getting views from our lead members, our ward members?
Yeah, and apologies for that. I did that. You were absolutely right to point that out. So ward members, obviously they're from a lot of them from Northern Town Council anyway, and that's part of their application. And I have spoken to a lead member. And apologies, I've not written that in there, but that happened after the report went out, and I've spoken to Councillor Piper and believe he's supportive of the application. But should he not be in agreement, I'm sure he will say so.
We'll wait for his vote in a minute.
But it's a good point. That's a very good point taken there. Thanks.
Thank
The
you.
lead member is the next to speak.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you to Adrian for consulting with me thoroughly.
Thank you, Adrian, as well. I apologise.
I did notice that, but I'll be late to my own funeral, so it's probably my fault. But one question I had, Adrian, which I didn't ask you at the time, does this complete the funding for their project? Do you know?
As far as I'm aware, I believe the tennis courts was their major part of their area. They did the play spaces right at the beginning. The tennis courts was a huge piece of their work up till now, and this completes the last space of the sport and recreational element. There will be, I'm sure there's elements that you want to do around the pavilion site as well and make full usage of that. But in terms of green infrastructure, Section 106 funding specifically, this will complete, I believe, their sport and recreational element of it.
I'm just conscious of, giving a sizable chunk of money and just knowing their overall strategy, that it's nice to be the final piece, isn't it? For this particular, not talking about other bits that they're looking to do, that's fine, but for this actual Muga, does this now become deliverable for them?
Yes, sorry, in terms of this funding, it creates it deliverable of the completion part of it, yeah.
And the only other point I wanted to make was I was pleased to see that they were using Time Macadam. I've done quite a bit of research on this kind of thing for Mugas and play spaces, and I think it's a sensible way to go, because a lot of these specialist surfaces are, they are expensive to maintain. These are usable, user-friendly. You can use local contractors potentially, which I think is a boon for our area if they can use local contractors. But yeah, I absolutely support it. Yeah, and I bet it's already been proposed and seconded. So, yeah.
Right, it's proposed, seconded, can I put it to the vote, please? Those in favour, please show.
Chris, you can't vote.
10. Those against? Those abstaining? 2. Right. We move on to item 10. To be perfectly honest, this is another rubber stamp job, I think.
Yeah.
Having said that, Bideford Blues are present, I believe. So if they wish to speak, they can, but I anticipate it'll be through the nod.
If there are any questions, we're very happy to take them.
Right. Adrian?
Thank you, Chair. Very similar to the last report. Again, it's under the same allocation of funding. It was a large pot that came forward from the land of Cornborough Road of just over £182,500. So it's from the same pot of money, and the application is from Bideford Blues Football Club down at the Sandymere area in Westwood Ho, and it's specifically for a mugger suitable tractor, which comes with storage, safety storage, and improved floodlighting for that space. In terms of the introduction, it's pretty much exactly the same as the previous. But in terms of its report from the football club, this is a first step in decarbonisation of the facility and to upgrade its floodlighting to LED bulbs, reducing its carbon footprint and overall overspill. In terms of the tractor requirements, they have just spent a considerable amount of money that's fundraised through the club of £200,000 raised themselves with other contributions locally from other organisations to improve the uplift of the surface. These surfaces, as we know, as Councillor Piper suggested too, that in terms of an actual proper sports surface, they have a lifespan of anywhere between 10 and 12 years. This one lasted a lot longer because they've looked after it really well. That £200,000 was spent on the uplift of the surface. The reason why we're able to bring this is because of the upgrade of the surface. They now have an improved shock pad underneath the carpet, which gives a much better surface, increase the longevity of it as well. But it also can be used for other activities, which makes it a lot safer. So other organisations could come and use that facility, which they wouldn't have been able to do before. So it really brings a bit more community use to it as well. The project to date is focused on upgrading the AstroTurf carpet, which we know they've had contributions from the Bridge Trust and Northern Town Council to deliver that as well. You may be aware from the press recently, there's an element in here about storage as well, and that's really significant as part of this. Companies like the Football Foundation won't provide these bits of machinery now without suitable storage. There's been considerable amount of theft happened with many sports clubs in the area recently, so that comes as a given as part of the essential element to the tractor itself. There's a huge amount of volunteer time that goes into looking after these facilities, and a huge amount of community input that goes with that as well. A lot of you would have seen Councillor Hames distributed an email recently as well in the last day or two about suggestion of considering a battery-powered tractor as being a bit more suitable, and in consultation with the club, they recognised that would have been their preferable option, but unfortunately, with those options suggested, the amount of time to charge the machinery compared to the amount of time of usage and the volunteer time, it just wasn't viable. The cost was anywhere between 10 to 15% more expensive for that piece of kit, and as much as we'd all like to have gone down that route, for it to take 45 minutes, to 2.5 hours to charge the machine, and then to take an hour and a half twice a week to deliver the usage, it would have meant volunteers not being able to complete their jobs and already putting in a lot of time and effort towards that. So it has been well considered within their thought process. The floodlighting itself, again, part of their decarbonisation programme, longevity for the club. What they currently have as well is it's a really old system, so this will reduce their outgoings as well as part of the club, which we know cost a community club so much as well. But also the new system brings in that overspill, so there's not so much lighting spillage around for the local community. There's a lot of houses going up nearby, so this will bring in a lot more localised. Facilities are managed by the subcommittee. We were there. A lot of you have been invited to the club over the last week or so to see how much time and effort goes into that, to the volunteering programme around what the club does in providing for hundreds of youngsters through to adults to play football locally, as well as other organisations that are able to use that facility. So to conclude, us as officers recognise that this fits the recommendation, if you like, of using this Section 106 green infrastructure funding, because it's quite specific in the Section 106 about supporting muggers and playing pitches. We see no reason why this shouldn't be approved. But again, it is for this committee to decide whether it's favourable for £28,260 to go towards this project. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Branton first.
I'll move a recommendation, Chair. I think the committee have done a brilliant job over the years from converting a scrappy old field into a really good facility, which a lot of young people especially enjoy. So hats off to them, and we need all encouragement we can give them, really.
Councillor Tinsley.
Yes, it's just a question about the total amount is 182,786, and these two projects add up to about 100,000. So there's some more in the kitty, and this says that it's starting their decarbonisation programme. So are you saving the rest for future proposals?
The potential is there, but we're not saving that specifically for the club. We recognise there are other clubs in Northern and Westwood Ho that will be looking for additional funding for other sports pitch projects as well. So these are just two applications that have come in recently, but we are fully aware that there's other organisations that we'd like to support as well.
And is there a limit, a time limit on the?
Yeah, it was 10 years on the application, which is only a couple of years in now, so we've got plenty of time.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Hames.
Chair, yeah, just to pursue the battery-powered tractor, I do understand that Mr. Lobato has investigated the possibilities. I've done a bit of research myself. There is one here, a farm track, which has got a 6-hour range on it and charging overnight from a 3-pin plug, but it may well be that particular tractor is not a suitable size or whatever, but I would quite like Mr. Lobato to just expand a bit on the battery powered tractor issue through you, Chair, if that's possible. Invited questions?
No, I'll take it, that's fine, yeah, very happy to. So I guess our starting point was we listened to the recommendation of the Astro manufacturer and we gave a specific recommendation. What we need is not a normal lawn mowing tractor.
No.
What we need is a tractor which is effectively modified specifically for Astro maintenance. We don't cut the Astro. What we're doing is brushing the crumb. Our investigation showed that the comparable tractor went from, it was around £7,300 plus VAT to about 8,100 if my memory serves me correct, plus VAT. So it's about an extra 1,000, so that's the 10-15%. And when we challenged the supplier for how well it would work for us, their indication was that it would only run for around 45 minutes on the Astro. Takes us around 1.5 to 2 hours to actually maintain the Astro with the tractor, and therefore we would have to interrupt that cycle. And so rather than the volunteer who actually looks after the Astro spending around 2 hours, he would actually have to do a run, stop, recharge, run, possibly even again. And we just felt that was unreasonable. However, notwithstanding that, if Councillor Haines has identified something which I've missed, and clearly, you know, I am not perfect, I would happily investigate. What I would say though is that if we do find something, I can guarantee it will cost more. I would ask perhaps that the committee give some form of concession in terms of increased grant to cover those costs. We will also have to add the infrastructure costs, because where we're storing the tractor current doesn't have the electrical supply. So we're going to need to modify our infrastructure. But I think, you know, as stated, it was our preferred solution. It again is part of our decarbonisation strategy, but unfortunately, when we looked at the practicalities, we found it didn't meet our expectations. But I'm happy to take that away. But I would rather go away with an approval, so at least we can get the floodlights under contract, which are on 12 weeks lead time, whilst we investigate this item further.
Thank you, Mr Lobato. Councillor Brenton proposed. I will second it from the chair, trying to get things moved on.
Councillor Piper already seconded it.
Oh, Councillor Piper had seconded. That's all right then. Can I put it to the vote? Those in favour, please shout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. Those against? Those abstaining? 1. Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. So Bideford Blues are okay. They can go back to the Barton.
Yeah. Just interested in the price of the tractor chair.
Now, I believe it's item 13, Northern Boroughs feasibility study.
I move that we go into part 2, Chair.
Is this a part 2 item? My God. Oh, sorry.
Item 12, closed session.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies, I have to ask the public to leave because we're moving into part 2, hopefully. Councillor Leathers proposed it. Councillor Tinsley seconded.
Chair, before that, I have a question. Why are we going to part 2 for this feasibility study?
We agreed it at the beginning.
Sorry?
We agreed it at the beginning.
Can't hear, sorry.
We agreed it at the beginning, will we?
No, that's a general agreement, and we then ask for specifics when it comes to the item. That's why I voted for it in the first place.
Thank you very much, guys.
So this is the approach that was, if you recall, we took this briefing session to senior leadership team, and the approach was agreed at senior leadership team that we would discuss
Senior
this.
leadership doesn't have any voting powers.
No, and that's why it's coming to you to vote whether you go into part 2 or not.
Right.
But it was proposed at senior leadership team that this item should be discussed confidentially because of the nature of the feasibility recommendations, and that you would agree a communication strategy to flow from this meeting. So that's why this has happened the way it has.
Councillor Whittaker.
I would like just to make sure that I don't have to declare an interest, quite frankly, because we've discussed this. I mean, Northern Town Council has a role on Northern Boroughs. And I've been to other meetings where we've discussed this, but we haven't voted on it. Earlier on, I didn't declare an interest because actually I was thinking about my colleagues over there being in Westford Ho and the Mugger being in Westford Ho. And quite frankly, for a moment, I forgot there was an overarching responsibility that, probably because I've just driven back from Exeter, was probably a bit weeny bit tired, but and I now want to know if I've got to declare an interest for this one. This
one's fine. The last one, it was just because it was an application being made by Northern Town
Yeah, I worked
Council,
it
so you're
out in the
sitting
end,
on
thank
one
you. Yeah,
committee
yeah.
asking and then transferring over and making the decision on whether that would be granted. This you can declare, but you don't have to.
So we did discuss this at Northern Town Council this morning in public.
I wasn't there.
So it's been discussed in public already then, is that right? I want to be careful about this because I was hauled in front of the Standards Committee once because having been one thing said at one committee and I then go and talk to the press, I get hauled in front of the Standards Committee and censured. So I take great exception to some items that are brought up in part 2. So, as I say, let's be clear about this, shall we?
Well, I actually run with you, Councillor Brown.
Well, that's good. Thank you.
In that this is just, shall we look at it and perhaps make an application? I don't see what
that's
there
all
is
it
about
is.
part 2 in that.
Yeah.
So, I couldn't find anything in there. It was it's taxpayers' money we're discussing basically at the end of the day. In any organisation, we're not talking about some commercial company moving in here with their accounts to show us. None of that, so what is the problem here? What is it?
Right. I'm gonna take this slightly different.
Right.
Are we going to move into part 2 for item number 13? That is Northern Boroughs. Is there a proposal that we should?
We've had a proposal and seconded, Chair, but councillor Brenton is entitled to ask the reasoning as to why we're going into part 2, and there's only a few exemptions within the constitution that allows us to, and so I'm not familiar with this report. So if we can't give a valid exemption, then it shouldn't be in part 2.
I can't see any reason for it to be
I read
part
the report, I couldn't see anything in there that would qualify it for part 2, but, you know, who am I?
The recommendation came from senior leadership.
Hey?
We go into part 2, didn't it?
No.
Yeah, I remember the comment. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, should I speak?
Yeah.
Sean? Yeah,
Go
look,
on,
I'm being
Mike.
very quiet here. Sorry, I mean, I must admit, I didn't decide whether or not it would go into part 2 or part, or the first part. I think the general consensus behind the feasibility study and communicating the feasibility study with the stakeholders was that we should do it at the same time, and we wanted to avoid anybody finding out about the content of the feasibility study through an inappropriate source such as Facebook or something like that before they've been properly briefed. And that's why I did a presentation this morning to Northern Town Council and also the Graziers and other stakeholders that might be affected by some of the things that are in the study, and why we've on the very same day brought the report to CNR and invited all the ward members and well, the lead members already here. So to the same meeting, so we can tell everybody about what the findings are at the same time. I'm not sure whether or not it now needs to go into part 2, but
If it's been openly discussed before, it would seem more sensible.
Yeah.
And if no exemptions apply, then.
We're still live, so.
We're still live at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, why not? You know, I think the public got a right to know why we do things, you know, and this is one of them. Is it because of the Graziers are they concerned about their sensitivities or no? I don't know, maybe that's a guess, but I've been here before.
The position I find myself in is that I want to, we've got a proposal in seconder that we go into part 2, but I get the feeling people don't really want to. So is the solution that you vote no, we don't put both into part 2 and then we take them individually?
I withdraw my second because I don't think there's any need to.
I can't see on the face of the report a reason to exclude the public, so I was looking to my quotes, it's not my, so if there isn't a reason to exclude the public, then we can't exclude the public, and I'm not easily seeing a part 2 requirement here.
Chair, don't we vote that we will take items into part 2? When we
Yes.
come to each item, we vote whether that item is in part 2 or not. So we're quite entitled to vote that this one doesn't need to be in part 2.
Thank you. So someone proposed that it's dealt with in part 1. Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Brenton.
Right.
Those in favour that it stays in part 1? That is unanimous, thank you. Right.
Chair, I have to declare an interest here because my land is on Northern Ridge. And technically I have rights, grazing rights to Northern Barrows. Now, do I need to step aside?
Do you have registered?
No, I don't have registered.
You don't have an interest in it?
That's good, I'll stay in, Chair. So now you clarified that.
Right, we move on. Drive on.
But thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to present the findings of the Northern Boroughs feasibility study to you. The views in the study are those of the consultant Chantel Brown, We commissioned her to carry out this study with a grant that we received from Natural England and the Rural Payment Agency. First of all, I'd like to explain the reasons why we undertook the feasibility study. So most of you are probably aware that Northern Burrows is a SSSI, or Site of Special Scientific Interest. And it received this designation in 1988 because of the Pebble Ridge, which is a unique geomorphological structure, or feature, sorry. Water germander, which is a rare plant found naturally occurring at only 2 other sites in the country. And also because Northern Burrows is home to lots of rare plants and animals, including endangered birds and endangered insects. Now, Torridge District Council and other stakeholders have a statutory obligation to protect and enhance these special features. And farm stewardship schemes provide us with an opportunity to access government funding, advice and support in order to help us do this. We entered into an environmental stewardship scheme in 2013, which provided funding for the Scrape and Scrub Management Plan. It also introduced quotas, which were issued by Northern Town Council, but are now issued by the Northern Burrows Charity each year for grazing allocations on Northern Burrows. This scheme comes to an end in 2028, at which point we can apply to switch to Countryside Stewardship Scheme, which is an environmental land management scheme, or one of the ELMs, which were introduced by our government following the country's departure from the European Union and the Common Agricultural Policy. Before you make an application to Countryside Stewardship, you must undertake a feasibility study. It's a requirement, and that is to assess the condition of the site and identify opportunities for improvements. And that's what we've done. It took around about a year to complete. It involved an ecological survey, stakeholder and public consultation, as well as a report with recommendations, which I'll go through now. So the first recommendation was about grazing. Now the report stresses that grazing is really important to the ecology of the site. However, it also indicates that areas of Northern Burrows are affected by overgrazing, particularly in the sand dunes. Now this is a problem because overgrazing prevents plants from flowering and going to seed, and this in turn is leading to a decline in plant diversity, and certain species are ceasing to be present on Northern Burrows. The report also notes that overgrazing can create short turf, which is more vulnerable to drought and less able to support insects and other wildlife. The report goes on to record that some of the graziers actually have difficulty meeting the minimum quota requirements in the winter months due to harsh conditions at the time. And therefore, to address both of these issues, it recommends that the quotas are lowered for the summer and for the winter months. The report goes on to talk about other options which may help reduce the problems with overgrazing. It talks about fencing of parts of Northern Burrows, and also talks about rotational grazing as well. And finally, the report also mentions that cattle could be used to address issues with overgrazing. That's only a small number of cattle, I should point out. But the reason it mentions the cows is because they graze in a different way to sheep and horses. They use their tongues to graze, pull at the grass, and they leave the vegetation much higher and varied in length. And they're quite commonly used for conservation grazing on other sites. The report recognises that reducing the quotas will likely disadvantage the graziers, and therefore recommends that some of the subsidies received through countryside stewardship should be used to compensate the graziers. Go to the next slide. Thank you. So the next recommendation relates to water germander. That's a picture of water germander there. If you've not seen it before, it's not probably the most spectacular plant, but it is incredibly rare, and it grows in a habitat known as humid dune slacks, which we have on northern boroughs. And we carried out the scrape and scrub management work to basically extend these areas of humid dune slack. Now, the report concludes that these were successful in creating valuable habitat, and the well-respected local botanist, Mary Breeds, is recorded in the report as saying she thinks that they are successful and we should actually create some more. That said, one of the objections of the scrape and scrub management work was to increase the population of water germander on northern boroughs to the 1990s average, which was in excess of 2,000 individual plants, and we have failed to do that. We've fallen short. It is believed that this is because the inland sea, which is where the water germander grows, is one of the areas affected by overgrazing. And it's noted in the report that other sites have had much more success where they have excluded the livestock from the areas in which the water germander grows. And so the report recommends that we fence off the area in which it grows, and also to speed up the recovery of this plant, we introduce plants from donor sites. The area, if fenced off, would still require vegetation management, and this could be done mechanically, or it's actually one of the areas which the report suggests cattle could be used in. They could be put in there in the autumn after the plant has gone to seed in order to graze and to prevent the area from becoming overgrown with scrub. Can we move to the next one, please? So we have dung beetles now. This was another recommendation within the report. Northern Boroughs is a very important site for insects. Recently, entomologists have become very interested in several species of dung beetle on Northern Boroughs because they are extremely rare. In fact, for some species, Northern Boroughs is actually the only place in the country that they are found. The unfortunate news, though, is that routine broad-spectrum worming treatment and treatment for fly strike is threatening the existence of these dung beetles. And currently, the dung beetles exist in the dung of only 1 or 2 of the horses. Therefore, the report recommends that that we adopt industry best practice, and we switch to invertebrate-friendly worming treatments, and we avoid blanket treatment of the animals, and we only treat the animals affected. It also suggests that the animals are taken off of Northern Boroughs when they are treated. I say we're actually asking the graziers to do this with their animals. And the report recommends that we support the graziers in making this transition towards better practice. It recommends that we use the subsidies received through countryside stewardship to fund workshops and other advice and guidance for them. It also suggests using these subsidies to finance a switch towards invertebrate-friendly worming treatments, and it also suggests that we should be compensating the graziers for the inconvenience of taking their animals off of Northern Boroughs for a period of time so they can carry out the treatment. Yeah, next slide, please.
Councillor Dart.
While we're on the...
Yeah, absolutely, I think that's fine.
So to speak.
Well, there's lots of questions. If you just, I'll let you have one, but really I'd like to hear
Just
the
about
whole
fly
report.
strike. So, did I understand you correctly that in terms of the sheep, you're going to do that in a proactive manner as opposed to, in a reactive manner as opposed to a proactive manner?
I think what it is suggesting, if fly strike treatment takes place on northern burrows, it takes place off of the site. That's the
Oh, so the sheep grazing on northern burrows don't have to not have treatment for fly strike?
No, absolutely not. No,
Oh.
no. What it is, I mean, what I should put a caveat in place and say that I'm not an expert on how animals are treated. The suggestion within the report is that we bring in an expert to run workshops, and so they can have these discussions with the graziers and provide them with really good advice. So the suggestion, the report, the study that we received, wasn't that treatment for fly strike should stop altogether. It's very important that the welfare of the animals is taken into consideration, and it's a priority at the end of the day. However, there's a lot of advice out there and a lot of people working in this area at the moment who are suggesting that both things can be achieved. What we want to do is use some of that money that we receive through Countryside Stewardship to fund workshops, to provide the graziers with the advice and guidance so they can do that and they can make sure that their practices are, I suppose, industry best practices like I mentioned. Yeah, does that clarify it?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the ideas that was developed in the study, in the report, was an idea about a Skern sanctuary. Now, this idea was developed following the public consultation in which problems with uncontrolled dogs were brought up quite often, and yeah, you're probably not surprised about that. This quite often was brought up in relation to bird disturbance. Other reasons for the concerns included sheep worrying, as well as aggressive behaviour towards other dogs and people. Now, to address these concerns, the consultant came up with the idea of excluding dogs from a small area on the Skern, which is the area, if you're not familiar with it, in the picture there. So that is actually off of the main Northern Burrows site. But she also recommended a small area on the eastern side of Northern Burrows should have a dog on leads restriction in place as well. Now, in the report, it is recognised that this could only be introduced as part of a dog control public space protection order review. This is a completely different process to an application for countryside stewardship. It's actually a process undertaken by the Environmental Protection Team and would require a separate consultation and a separate decision at the relevant committee, and couldn't be introduced as part of a countryside stewardship application. I have to be absolutely clear about that. It is you know, a separate matter entirely. However, the reason that it's mentioned in the report is because the consultant wanted to try and reflect the views that were expressed in the consultation, and she also suggested that through countryside stewardship we could apply for capital grant funding to build a bird hide and also put in place some interpretation signage as well, which would enhance the visitor experience when visiting the Skern Sanctuary, she called it. But I stress again, we cannot introduce dog restrictions with an application to countryside stewardship. There's no options in countryside stewardship which relate to that, and it would have to go through this separate process if it is something we were interested in investigating. Similarly, the consultant also mentioned restricting traffic in the area and also launching craft from the Skern as well. However, such you know, significant public access changes would also, I think, require a separate consultation and a separate decision at committee. There aren't any options within countryside stewardship which relate to these things, but you know, it might help to develop a skirting sanctuary if it was ever decided that this was something we wanted to press ahead with. Yes, if we want to move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so there were a number of other recommendations included in the report, identifying opportunities to improve the environment. These included further scrape works, re-wetting areas of the site, developing ponds and reed beds, as well as managing areas of the burrows vacated by the golf course as they retreat inland. As well as creating valuable habitat, there is a potential that these ideas could create a better space for visitors, control sewage discharges, as well as capture and store carbon in our attempt to fight climate change. However, these works would rely upon modelling future coastal change, which was beyond the scope of the report. So there is still a lot of research to be carried out before we are able to identify whether or not these ideas are feasible. And therefore, Natural England have agreed to provide further funding to undertake this research, pending a grant application. So if we go to the final slide, please. Yeah. So one thing that I should point out to everyone, that we can't actually submit an application to Countryside Stewardship until 2028, when our current scheme finishes. It gives us plenty of time to prepare an application, and there is going to be a lot of work involved in doing that, not least the additional research that is required to help us work out whether some of those ideas I mentioned just a minute ago are feasible. In the meantime, I think it is important that we will begin the process of negotiating terms of an application with some of the other stakeholders, such as the Graziers, Northern Town Council, and the Royal North Devon Golf Course. Today I'm hoping that you will support the recommendation that we continue with this work. Thank you very much.
Right, you've heard it. Yep, Councillor Elliott.
What's the Grazier's view on the possibility of restricting numbers?
Yeah, well, we did this presentation to the Northern Boroughs charity and the Graziers this morning, and not all the Graziers were in attendance, but the Graziers that make up 90% of the livestock on Northern Boroughs were there, and there were, I think it's fair to say that there wasn't a lot of objection to the idea of reducing the grazing numbers. Obviously, you know, I mentioned in the presentation that the consultant recommended compensating the Graziers using some of the countryside stewardship money to do this. And I also should put in context the amount that the consultant recommended the grazing be lowered in the, you know, for the summer and winter quotas. I have written it down here. So it's not, she hasn't given specific numbers, and those of you familiar with countryside stewardship schemes or you know, Elm schemes will know that they use something called livestock units. Horses on Northern Boroughs during the last scheme was made up one livestock unit, and like a sheep with lamb at foot was 0.3. So basically I've converted those livestock units based on the ratio of sheep and horses that we have at the moment. So currently we have a maximum of 360 sheep in the summer on Northern Boroughs, and under the consultant's proposals, those would be reduced to 300. So, and the current number of horses in the summer is 32, and that would be reduced to 26. In the winter, the minimum number would be reduced to 300, and sorry, the minimum number of sheep would be reduced to 300, and the minimum number of horses would be reduced to 19. The max number in the winter for sheep would be reduced to 508, and the max number of horses would be reduced to 32. Now, interestingly, we've recently done a sheep drive, and we've counted the number of sheep and horses on Northern Boroughs, and the sheep sat between those figures, so it was already between those figures, and the horses were just one over. So we're not talking about a massive change. I think in the past, the Boroughs has been a lot more heavily grazed, but currently, this year at least, those numbers were much lower than in the past, and are currently more or less in line with what the consultant is recommending.
What sort of numbers of cattle was he looking at?
So I think the cattle, and it's it's certainly not something that would have to be introduced as part of an application to countryside stewardship. It was just a suggestion. I think there are some things in her report which Natural England would want, such as a reduction in grazing numbers. That is a big concern for them. The cattle were just an option that the consultant recommended, and she was only talking about a very small herd. We're talking like 3 or 4, as something that would be used for nature conservation grazing. Cattle are quite often used for nature conservation grazing. Breeds like Dexter Blackstocks, Belted Galloways are the most popular. I think it was more food for thought when the consultant talked about it. I think realistically it would be quite tricky putting cattle onto Northern Boroughs, even if you use no fence technology. The cattle have done a really good job on Broughton Boroughs across the water in terms of conservation grazing. However, there is issues with the public, and obviously they find them a lot more intimidating than people would find sheep. And I think because Northern Boroughs is such a popular visitor attraction, I think it would be difficult to bring the cattle onto site. But I think it's only one of the options, and I think the main option recommended by the consultant, and the one that Natural England would want to see in an application, is reducing those quotas.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Brendan?
Are you having any link up with Broughton Boroughs at all? Are they doing a similar feasibility study as well? Because clearly, although on the map it looks like it's all one big Bideford Bay, doesn't it? In theory, it should be all similar, but it isn't, is it? Because Broughton has got a lot of different stuff on there compared to Northern Boroughs. I'm thinking of the Oleander, Hawkmoth, that type of thing, that we don't have over this side. So, is there any sort of link up going to happen there?
I mean, I do. I mentioned actually earlier that that during the report, the consultant spoke with the people involved in the management of Broughton Boroughs, particularly Mary Breeds, who is I said a local botanist, and she and her husband have worked for years on Broughton Boroughs and been heavily involved in the management of that site. In addition to Mary Breeds, the consultant also spoke to Andy Bell, who is manager of the biosphere, and the biosphere's core area is Broughton Boroughs. So he is very knowledgeable about that site. And the consultant also spoke to Rupert Hawley, who has been a long-time ranger over at Broughton Boroughs. Outside of this, the feasibility study, I have been over to Broughton Boroughs and seen the work that they've carried out there under the Dynamic Dunescapes scheme. Sorry, a bit of a mouthful. Seeing the work that they've carried out, I would say that was, certainly the capital works that were involved in that programme were extremely radical. They were cutting great notches in the dunes at Broughton Boroughs in order to allow windblown sand to move further inland.
I was done by the Americans during the war though, but.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, absolutely. Yeah, the Americans carried out, inadvertently, they carried out some fantastic conservation work on Broughton Burrows because they hosed down the site, and what they achieved by doing that was brought the Broughton Burrows back into an early stage of succession. So you saw lots and lots of pioneer plants, and the rarest plants in sand dune systems tend to be pioneer plants. They tend to be those plants that exist in the very early stages of sand dune development, when nothing else can really grow in them, and then eventually they become outcompeted. And the idea of the recent works that they've carried out on Broughton Burrows was to try and recreate those conditions in a very similar way to the scrape work that we did under the Scrape and Scrub Management Plan. So I mentioned that the consultant did suggest that further scrape work would be a good idea. However, the exact location of the scrape work, as well as I suppose the exact location of any capital work, any further capital work on Northern Burrows would need to be guided by research into future coastal change, which is the I suppose the extra research that Natural England are keen to fund.
Thank you.
Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you very much. Really interesting presentation. It's actually the second time I've,
Oh, yes,
I've
yeah.
heard it, but I was very pleased to hear it. And then, it's the balancing the needs of the environment with the graziers and the dog walkers, and it's a balance that we have to strike. But I think if there's money going there, we should definitely make a proposal, and so I would like to move the recommendation.
Second that. Right. Oh, Councillor Whitaker.
Well, I just want to say there are some real opportunities there, aren't they? And we've got the time while one stewardship scheme runs out, and the other one is able to come forward. There are some opportunities there for some really good changes. And for a long time, I've thought it might have been a bit overgrazed, to be honest with you. So it's good. It's good, some real opportunity.
Councillor Pennington.
Thank you for your report, Mike. You're always enthusiastic. Absolutely fantastic work you do down there. Dung beetles, interested in the report. In the second paragraph on the dung beetle piece on page 31. Populations of rare dung beetles are now limited to the dung of 1 or 2 horses. How do you know which 1 or 2 horses?
Sniff.
I think the dung beetle issue was actually raised separately, and the Northern Burrows charity were contacted directly about this, and I also had a visitor in the summer who came in. He'd been out looking at the dung. And he showed me these incredible videos where he would sieve the dung, and the amount of insect life that came out of the dung, which hadn't come from an animal that had received the treatment, and the amount of insect life that came out of the dung of animals that quite clearly received the treatment was staggering. I think this chap that came into the centre is one of the guys that does do workshops and provides farmers with help and guidance to try and make changes that are a bit more sustainable. And I think that is some of the footage that he likes to use to convince people why it is such an important thing that to move away from I suppose unsustainable practices, and he's done a lot of work on Dartmoor with the commoners up there, and he's made and I think he's worked quite well with them. Yeah, and it was one of these entomologists who suggested that I don't know if he knew exactly which horses were not being treated, but I think it was an estimate.
It's the
Really,
thin ones, I
he estimated that considering the amount of dung that is on northern boroughs, and considering that the dung that he found with insect life in, he reckoned that there were just one or two horses that were not receiving this treatment, and basically the entire flock of sheep and almost all the horses were receiving the
It's
treatment.
very interesting. I shan't come and do any sieving down there.
No,
but,
no.
Something I could do after going to the Burton, maybe.
Yeah.
Second question.
After this conversation, we should have gone into part 2.
Apologies.
Second question, country stewardship scheme. I'm a farmer,
Yeah.
and we've been told that the Labour government is now looking at everything very closely, and we're waiting for further announcements. So if you do your work and they change the rules, are you preparing for what some new direction the government may take in the future? Because I gather all this is up in the air at the moment.
Yeah, I that's absolutely true, and I think by 2028 we could have a new government with a completely different take on the the farm stewardship system.
9, we're looking at the next election if they hang on long enough.
Oh right, okay. I thought. Sorry, I made a mistake. Then I thought it was 2027. But we could have an early election, and we could have a change of government. So so that was my mistake. But yeah, and certainly the current government could take a different direction as well, and change policy.
I think the Conservative government set the policy in the first place.
The Conservative government did.
The Labour government has now changed it, and we are now, and just from my point of view, trying to understand where the thinkers behind DEFRA are taking us.
Yeah.
And you've got to try and implement your policy. And we're saying to you, go on and do some work. All I'm saying is, what can you see that I'm really uncertain to about the moment? Because I don't want you doing a lot of work if we don't know what they're going to be requiring in the future. That's all I'm saying, really, Mike.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, and I think 3 years is a long time, and lots of changes could take place. Essentially, we are expected through the Wildlife and Countryside Act to make every effort we can to protect and enhance the special features of northern boroughs, and Natural England would expect us to investigate opportunities like this to carry out our statutory obligations, and their advice at the moment is that we go for this scheme because it will provide us with the opportunity to get the funding, the support and the advice to do exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, there's always a lot of work to do on Northern Boroughs, I recognise that. But if we were to move forward, and I hope we will with this, surely you'll get another grant and there'll be another study. So to some degree, some of the work will be taken by the consultant.
Do you mean for the extra research that is proposed? Yeah, absolutely. I think the coastal change management work that I spoke about, the extra research, is going to be combined with work that Chris Wilson, the council's coastal engineer, is working on at the moment. It's very technical and and complicated, and I'm glad that Chris is involved because some of the things that Natural England want done are things that I'm not familiar with. So there will be a lot of extra work involved, and we will be seeking a lot of expertise from the consultant.
And therefore funding to help you with that work.
Sorry, I misunderstood the
That's
question. Yeah,
fine.
Natural England have agreed in principle to fund any extra research.
Thank you.
Councillor James.
All I would say is the lesson from SFI is that if it's in and it's agreed, you'll get the money. If it's registered, you'll get money if it becomes available. If you've got nothing in, you will get nothing. And I was lucky, I was in the middle band. Mine had gone in, had been registered, originally told I wouldn't get the money. then money become available, and I got the money last June to do some work. So you have got to plough on with it, in the hope that if you've got something, it's just like having something shovel ready, is that if you've got it there and you get it registered. Yeah, sorry, yeah, but you can't sit back and think, this money's not there, you're not gonna do it, 'cause it won't happen.
Right, as someone whose business has made hundreds of these applications in the last 2 or 3 years, welcome to the madhouse. We are dealing with many stupid regulations, rules, ideas, thoughts, and this in many respects encapsulates them. The grazing. I can remember when Devon County Council reduced the limit for number of sheep on northern boroughs before they were handed over to Torridge. And they reduced it from 2,000 to 1,300 because of overgrazing. Now we're talking that we're overgrazing at 300. So these sheep are eating a hell of a lot more these days, aren't they? It's breeding, isn't it? We're proposing to shove some cattle there. Now, cattle put their tongue around the grass, as was described. But there ain't no grass there for them to put their tongues around. So who's going to put their cattle out on the burrows to lose weight and devalue? You know, it will, if you're going to do it, it can be done. But the farmer who does it will need compensation for the drop in condition of those cattle. Now tell me, we've clearly been through this scheme before. How much compensation have the graziers had?
In the past?
Yes.
Nothing today.
Well, that is disgraceful, because the principle of the scheme is that is supposed to be a subsidy to agriculture. The graziers are the agriculturalists. And clearly, when this application was made first time around, the graziers were ignored. They should not have been. I can tell you that Thornhill Head at Buckland Brewer is an SSI of 90 acres. The graziers up there receive compensation every year, even the ones who don't graze it. So I think there's got to be an awful lot of thought. This report, from what I can read here, is prepared by an environmentalist with a good urban outlook. It doesn't consider the farming community at all. And yet it's supposed to be a farming grant. Yes, we've got to go ahead with it, but we've got to be a lot more careful where we're getting our advice from.
I suppose, Chair, I should just clarify that the consultant was from a farming background, or that's you know, and a business is farm consultancy. So whether or not you feel that you know, that is reflected in the report is a different matter. But that's.
I don't know the consultant at all, so it's nothing personal. I've never seen or heard of.
Isn't the grazing free on Broughton?
Pardon?
Isn't the grazing free on Northern Boroughs? You talk about.
Oh yes, graziers get their grazing for free, but they're the ones entitled to compensation.
For loss of land.
Yes.
Well, that's what's been talked about.
I think you know, I can't really comment on the previous scheme or the you know, the arrangements that took place, because I wasn't part of them, but the consultant is very clear that the graziers should be compensated through this scheme that she is proposing. And,
Can I just say, Chair, that we were, well, I was asked, certainly, I presume somebody else on the council may well have been asked in the past by graziers that we should get compensation. I think I must have passed that question on. Only to be told that no, we didn't compensate them. And honestly, I mean, it wasn't a scheme I was particularly well understood.
Right,
But obviously, we're going to change things in the future. by the
it's
sound
got
of
to
it.
be very different, and I would suggest that we need to take a lot better advice. Right, I'm gonna, have I got a proposal in second? I have, right, put it to the vote. Are we gonna carry on looking at it?
Yes.
Those in favour?
Can I just see the recommendation, sorry. Okay,
That is unanimous, I believe.
Put your hand up, it's not unanimous.
Now we're going to move into part two. I hope if someone will propose it.
Chair?
I'll second it.
thank you, Mike.
Councillor Whittaker.
Councillor Whittaker's proposed part two.
I'll second it.
Councillor James has seconded. All in favour, please show. That is unanimous, thank you. So now in part
I just have a minute?
two, we